Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Forward. Left. Left. Right.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us, only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. And no religion, too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. a brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. Imagine.
Some days hold events that shake us to our very core. They remind us to embrace all that we hold valuable, all that we hold dear, everything we hold sacred. Such was the day of Tuesday, September 11th, 2001, a day that shook us to our core. As you reflect on these sacred and valuable things in your own heart and mind, would you join me in a moment of silence?
Battalion 1 to Manhattan. Battalion 1. We just had a plane crash into upper floor of the World Trade Center, transmit a second alarm, and start relocating companies into the area. You have a second plane into the other tower of the Trade Center, major fire.
Crawford David, Marine 6 advising a second plane into the World Trade Center, case.
Okay. One of the buildings is partially collapsed. Is it all the time of the
Transmitting the urgent, identified.
Freedom and high urgent. The other tower just collapsed. Raise the collapse. Raise the collapse.
Welcome. I'm Dr. Andy Aguinobi, CEO of UConn Health. I want to thank everyone for joining us today for this, everyone who's joining us today for this important occasion, both in person and virtually. On behalf of the UConn Health community, I'm honored to welcome our distinguished guests, Governor Ned Lamont, who is joining us virtually, State Senator Gennaro Bizzarro, who's here, UConn President Tom Katsouleas, UConn Fire Chief William Perez, UConn Police Deputy Chief Maggie Silva, the men and women of our UConn Police and Fire Departments, and of course, UConn Police Officer Susan Casey, who graciously leads this special remembrance event every year. Thank you, Sue, for bringing our campus together, even virtually, during these trying times, to make sure that we never, ever forget what happened on that September day. I also want to thank the UConn Honor Guard, our chaplain, Daniel Warrener, the Sweet Adelines for sharing their incredible voices as they do every year, and the instrumentalists from the Department of Corrections for providing today's music. As you all know, the September 11 attacks were a series of 4 coordinated terrorist attacks by the Islamic terrorist group Al-Qaeda against the United States on the morning of Tuesday, September the 11th, 2001. The attacks killed 2,996 people, injured over 6,000 others, and many more died of 9/11 related cancer and respiratory diseases in the months and years following the attacks. We are here today to remember the almost 3,000 victims killed in the September 11 attacks and the aftermath. 412 of those killed on that day were emergency workers in New York City who responded to the World Trade Center. We have first responders at UConn Health who dropped everything and went to help. Heroes such as retired UConn Health Fire Chief William Perkins and Dr. Rob Fuller, who's sitting right over there, our chair of emergency department. Thank goodness they returned. Not everyone did. The first responders who died that day included 343 firefighters, including a chaplain and 2 paramedics of the New York City Fire Department, 37 police officers of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey Police Department, 23 police officers of the New York City Police Department, 8 emergency medical technicians and paramedics from private emergency medical services, 1 patrolman from the New York Fire Patrol. That day, the Fire Department of New York also lost its department chief, first deputy commissioner, one of its marshals, and one of its chaplains. This tragedy, all the lives lost, affected everyone in the nation, particularly in New England. There were about 161 people with close Connecticut ties who died that day. We're here because we must never forget those we lost in the attack and those who died trying to save them. 9/11 marked a turning point in our history, a loss of innocence, comfort, and safety. That's one reason that 19 years later, most of us can still remember exactly what we were doing at the time the first plane hit the towers. 19 years has taught us that we are resilient, we overcome, but we do not forget. Despite pandemics, hurricanes, recessions, wildfires, we never forget. So thank you, and I want to, at this point, turn over the microphone to our guest speakers, our wonderful guest speakers, and I want to start with the president of the University of Connecticut, UConn President Tom Katsouleas.
Thank you, Dr. Andy. Thank you, Governor Lamont, Senator Bizzarro, and for all of you who are joining us here today, both virtually and in person. No matter how much time passes, the tragic loss of life 19 years ago, including so many sons and daughters of the state of Connecticut and many members of the UConn family, is still vivid and terrible in our memories. I am grateful to the organizers of this annual memorial tradition, Sue Casey and others, for combining music and poetry in the ceremony, because we need to be reminded of the beauty in the world, the caring, and the common humanity in the wake of a horrible event that confronts us with just the opposite. It is particularly poignant to have this ceremony here at this place, so committed to caring for and preserving human life, and to have it now in the context of the current pandemic crisis in which human life is threatened by a scourge of a different type. The image of the firefighters running into danger 19 years ago is burned into our brains, just as the images of health workers here and across the world selflessly putting themselves in the line of COVID fire come to mind today. Your courage and commitment exemplify the best of humanity, of our values, and what makes us resilient as a society. Through your deeds, more than we can ever do through these speeches, you honor the memory of those who lost their lives on that terrible day. Thank you for reminding us today and forever that together we can bear any burden and overcome any obstacle. Thank you.
Thank you, President. And I think at this point, we would like to welcome Governor Ned Lamont via video conference for his comments. Governor?
Andy and Tom and the greater UConn family, I'd like to speak in particular to students, if you're there. First of all, Officer Casey, I love that song by John Lennon, Imagine. And that was the defining song for me growing up as a young person. And each generation has their own defining music and their own defining events, for better or for worse. I mean, when I was a young student, we had something called the Cuban Missile Crisis. You probably haven't heard much about it, but we were fourth graders hiding under our desks, afraid of a nuclear attack. And a couple of years later, we had a president of the United States who was assassinated. And my dad would tell me about what Pearl Harbor meant to him when he was a very, very, very young man. And for my kids who are a little older than you, the college students, it was 9/11 and the incredible anxiety and fear that they felt just looking at their parents' eyes. And we were down in Fairfield County, and it just seemed like every 10th house had a black wreath hanging from it, which is a different type of destruction. If those other ones I described are sort of sudden and brusque and resulting in ashes and ruins, obviously COVID is a very different type of display. As just told us, you never forget, you learn from it, but you don't always let it define you either. And I'd like to say that each of these events had one thing in common for me, is given all the tragedy and the people that we lost, the moments of heroism, the first responders when it came to a 9/11, the firefighters running into the burning building. Here with COVID, maybe they were nurses, maybe they were daycare operators, or maybe they were food service workers. We call them essential workers. Those little acts of heroism helped define that event for me, and I hope for all of you as well. And more broadly, it just reminds us of our common humanity. And I think it's moments like that bring us together as a family, bring us together as a university, bring together as a country. And if we can learn from that little sense of common purpose, these tragedies become building blocks, I hope, for a better tomorrow. And that's what the song Imagine is all about to me. Thanks to each and every one of you, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Governor, for those very powerful thoughts. Now I would like to welcome our State Senator, Gennaro Bizzarro, for his words. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank UConn Health and everybody that's here in attendance, including the UConn Police and Fire Departments, for hosting the ceremony. It's my honor to represent this part of Farmington up at the state capitol and to be here again with all of you as we remember an event that changed life as we know it for so many generations of Americans. I have three daughters, all of whom were born in our post 9/11 world. And this morning, I was thinking to myself how for their generation, unfortunately, this awful pandemic will be remembered as a major turning point in how life is lived. And for many of us, 9/11 marked that same kind of turning point. Life, as we knew it, changed at 8:46 a.m. Eastern Time on September 11, 2001. And it's difficult, I think, for the younger generation of Americans to understand precisely how America, and indeed the entire world, was paralyzed in the days after the 9/11 attack. The streets were empty, air traffic was suspended, events were canceled, businesses shuttered, financial markets roiled. Sound familiar? Indeed, the parallels are many. The anxiety of the unknown, the fear of another strike, the collective mourning of the dead, and the prayers for the victims. The call to action by political leaders, and unfortunately, the fighting. Fighting about where blame should be cast, fighting about who failed whom, and whether certain segments of the population should be isolated. The many calls for Americans to pick a side. Sound familiar? But there's another common theme, I think, between 9/11 and this awful pandemic that I want to focus on today. And that is the heroism of our first responders. The courage and selflessness of first responders was on full display on that fateful day 19 years ago. And it has been every single day since then. From the first responders who gave their lives to rush into burning buildings 19 years ago, to the healthcare workers who risk their lives battling the deadly COVID-19 disease today. Those on the front lines remind us by their actions that the strength, resolve, and goodness of the American people is stronger than any natural disaster or man-made evil that confronts us. 19 years after the attacks, I continue to marvel at the selfless acts of first responders and ordinary citizens around this country. We united in the face of terror. We united in compassion. We united in grief to mourn the victims. We united in resolve. We celebrated the everyday heroes, those who stepped in and stepped up selflessly to help strangers. And we united as Americans who love our country to create good out of bad, to create positivity through our common humanity. We vowed to never forget, and we renew that vow by this ceremony today. We recommit ourselves to performing those small, selfless, daily acts of kindness to our first responders, to our frontline health professionals, our military servicemen and women, our police officers, our firefighters, and to complete strangers. I say thank you. And as a proud Connecticut resident, as a father, as a husband, and as your state senator, I thank all of you here at UConn Health for your ongoing commitment to compassion, your commitment to honor those words that we shall never forget, your commitment as Americans to carry on the 9/11 legacy of kindness, to staying resolute in making a positive difference in people's lives. Through your commitment to life-saving research and patient care, and your commitment to making UConn Health a place of healing and a place with a stellar reputation for innovation and excellence. And finally, I want to thank all of you for remembering and for understanding the true meaning of the words, united we stand. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator. So here, now we're going to have Officer Susan Casey and the Sweet Adelines, and we will have a poem. Thank you.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
She hurts. She aches. Heart will break. Angels came down that infamous day. God called all of you home by the pearly gates. Ascending with the angels was your fate. September 11th, 2001, you lost brothers, sisters, daughters, and sons. On this day, born, within hours, was forlorn. New York City's finest and bravest gave the ultimate sacrifice, doing what they love and do best. You've known that down at Ground Zero, among us, all of our heroes, arriving at the Twin Towers that were afire, you, first responders, knew it was dire. Awful, I feel to see, my own being dragged, debris. The ashes into the ground. Brothers and sisters, never to be found. Before, after, miss your smile. After, living our tour for today, not for tomorrow. We grieve your anguish and your sorrow. We tremble at your passing. It is more than we can bear. Since you left, a day we don't shed a tear. I don't know any of your names, but life from this date will never be the same. We need to hold on to our kindred spirit and camaraderie, as we shall all meet again in eternity. It is the perfect September day, always to mourn. 11:1.
To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
Thank you. I'm proud that we're all safely gathered here as a community to take a moment out of our busy lives to honor and reflect. And I want to also mention the deans of the School of Medicine, Dr. Liang, and the Dean of the School of Dental Medicine, Dr. Lepowski, and thank them for joining us as well. But I want to really thank everybody who has come together and does come together every single year to remember. I want to end by giving thanks and recognition to all of the first responders here with us today, as well as our current day heroes who are providing healthcare on the front lines during the COVID-19 pandemic right here at UConn Health. Thank you all, and thank you for coming to this event.